All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive, fundamental paradigm shift that's happening right now in 2026. Look, the days of hiring huge teams to do work that 50 lines of code and an AI agent can finish in seconds, those days are over. We're literally watching a complete restructuring of entrepreneurship. We're talking about one individual achieving what used to take teams of 10, 20, even 50 people. So grab your notes because we're diving deep into exactly why AI-first solopreneurs are totally outperforming legacy agencies, and more importantly, how they're doing it with almost zero monthly overhead costs.
Let's just launch straight into Section 1, the death of legacy agencies, and talk about the actual financial stakes here. We really need to break this illusion that you need a massive team to get huge results.
$80,000 to $120,000, right? That is the shocking monthly payroll cost that traditional agencies are carrying. And let's be totally honest with ourselves. A massive chunk of that is just charged straight back to the clients to cover the agency's bloated overhead. You know, the fancy physical office space, the layers of middle management whose main job literally just seems to be scheduling more meetings. It's entirely inefficient.
Now, I want you to contrast that massive legacy cost with this. $300 to $500. That's it. That is the typical monthly software cost for an AI-first solo operator who is achieving the exact same output. We're talking about a full tech stack covering content, client communication, design, workflow automation, the whole shebang, basically for the price of a mid-tier car lease.
So the absolutely crucial point to take away here is that this isn't just some marginal efficiency gain. You aren't just, clipping coupons and saving a few bucks on software. This is a totally different category of business. Welcome to the era of the zero-headcount agency. It means physical offices and those clunky human-to-human handoffs between departments are totally obsolete. That friction of scheduling a sync meeting just to move a project from a brief to a draft, yeah, that's completely gone.
So how does this actually work? Section 2. What are agentic workflows? Let's move past the basic chatbots and look at the mechanics. Think about the stark contrast between what we'll call old AI and this new agentic reality. Old AI was basically you asking one model one question. You type in, hey, draft this email, and it would spit out some text. Pretty cool, but basic. Agentic AI, though, it's an autonomous multi-step workflow. It drafts the email, sure, but then it checks your CRM to personalize it based on your recent interactions, figures out the optimal delivery time, schedules it, and then logs the outcome. It executes that entire process without you having to lift a single finger.
Imagine this kind of pipeline in action. It's like a highly efficient digital assembly line. A task moves seamlessly through specialized AI agents. First, a copywriter agent drafts the text. Then, it autonomously hands it off to a reviewer agent that strictly checks it against your brand guidelines. And finally, a formatter agent preps it for whatever specific platform you're using. Each agent just does its one job exceptionally well, and the work moves from start to finish without a single human check-in meeting. And this market shift is just huge. Like Agent Founder points out here, 40% of enterprise applications will incorporate task-specific AI agents by the end of 2026. But here is the absolute secret weapon. While those big enterprises need massive teams and months of compliance reviews just to adopt this stuff, you, as a solopreneur, can deploy it literally this afternoon. The operational gap between a solo founder and a heavily funded startup is closing so fast, it's making people's heads spin.
Okay, Section 3, the zero-headcount tech stack. What does this actually look like under the hood? Let's talk tools.
Your new digital departments basically look exactly like this tech stack right here. These are the tools effectively replacing human departments. You got Gumloop, which lets non-technical operators build agents just using natural language. Then there's CrewAI, which is honestly incredible for orchestrating multiple agents so they can collaborate on a single task. And then Zapier or N8N act as the connective tissue, handling all that app-to-app workflow automation. This is how you run a digital workforce today.
Now, for the developers tuning in, there are some incredibly powerful, production-tested frameworks driving this revolution. As highlighted by Alice Labs' 2026 deployments, you've got frameworks like LangGraph 1.0, the Claude Agent SDK, and the newly unified Microsoft Agent Framework 1.0. These give you precise, enterprise-grade control over things like branching, retries, and setting up human-in-the-loop systems. But, none of this works without connection. Enter the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. With over 97 million installs, MCP is basically the connective infrastructure that turned the internet into an AI-readable layer. It bridges the gap between your autonomous agents and the software they actually need to control. It's what allows them to get the actual work done.
Moving into Section 4, solving the monetization gap. Because let's face it, the biggest obstacle solopreneurs face right now isn't building the agents anymore. It's figuring out how to actually get paid for these autonomous workflows.
Check this out. Data from a recent Simon-Kucher global software study reveals a really vital story. 76% of companies launched AI features, but fewer than 10% actually saw a revenue uplift. Crazy, right? Why? Because traditional, seat-based SaaS subscriptions just completely fail to capture the real value of AI. A flat monthly fee leaves so much money on the table when your agents are out there performing hundreds of sub-cent microtransactions in the background.
To solve this, we have to use modern AI payment models. You can't just charge for software access anymore. You have to charge for value. Specialized platforms, like Nevermind, for example, step in to offer exactly this. We're talking usage-based pricing, outcome-based pricing where you literally charge for a booked meeting, value-based pricing tied directly to ROI, and prepaid credit systems. This is what ensures every single model call turns into auditable revenue.
And that brings us to the next frontier, zero-trust agent-to-agent commerce. This is where ERC 4337 smart accounts come in. They are programmable wallets that allow your AI agents to autonomously transact, negotiate, and settle payments with other agents. And they do it without a human having to click approve on a pop-up every single time. It completely removes the human bottleneck from the payment process, all while keeping a perfectly verifiable audit trail. All right, as we bring this explainer into its final act, Section 5, Scaling Without Scaling Stress. We need to completely reframe what scaling a business actually looks like when you remove the burden of managing human headcount.
$163,000. For a traditional agency, that number represents a hard, frustrating ceiling. It's their average revenue per full-time employee. Their growth is strictly capped by that ratio. If they want to make more money, they literally have to hire more people, which of course increases their overhead, cuts into their margins, and skyrockets their stress levels.
But the AI-first solopreneur, you shatter this ceiling entirely. You are playing a completely different game. We now measure revenue per operator, not per employee. Because your output isn't tied to headcount anymore, your margins can expand exponentially without your payroll expanding at all. It's a beautiful thing.
So, you might be wondering, what does the solopreneur actually do all day? Well, you operate exclusively in the 20% judgment zone. You leave the raw execution to the agents, and you only touch the work that requires true, nuanced human judgment. That means setting the strategic direction, doing the final output review, building genuine human relationships with your clients, and making high-level decisions. Your time goes back to strategy.
I absolutely love this quote because it hits the nail on the head regarding this profound psychological shift. You stop being the person who does the service and become the person who owns the system that does the service. You transform from a busy, overworked freelancer trading your precious time for money into a true, highly leveraged one-person enterprise. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. Look closely at your business right now. What is the one task you would automate first if the cost were zero? Because the reality of this new agentic economy is that the cost is rapidly approaching zero, and the tools we explored today are just sitting there waiting for you to use them. Take that first step, prove it on a small scale, and watch your leverage multiply. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.